People of Reddit that didn't want a child and are parents now. How's your life now? Story 1. My husband and I never wanted kids. In fact, 2 months before we got married in 2016, I got my tubes tied. And I still have an IUD, so nothing's getting through there. Well, Saint happens. And a month and a half after my wedding, my severely mentally ill sister asked me to pick her 5-year-old up and basically never came back for her. My husband and I went to court to get custody of her. And now we have a happy, well-adjusted 7-year-old. I still struggle with it at times. My husband and I had some pretty neat plans for our future, so now we've got to try to figure out how we can make it work with a kid in the picture. I also have severe depression, so sometimes it's hard to get up and take her to school and stuff like that, but we've got a lot of support between my husband, my mom, my younger sister, and my husband's family, so it all works out. In the end, I'm honestly just grateful that my kid is no longer being abused or neglected, and that thought I alone really helps me in coming to terms with the fact that my life isn't going the way I planned it. Story 2. My wife took legal custody of her son's 1-year-old daughter when he got sent to prison. We had been together 7 years, but only been married around 1. She did this without discussing with me, just kept her one day and she's still here. I don't have any kids of my own. Doing that without my input has really affected our relationship. It's been 10 years now, and my wife and her granddaughter fight constantly. She was spoiled bad by all the blood relatives and now runs the roost. It has made being at home very tense. I am 60 years old now and always thought I would have a nice, quiet home to be comfortable in. So to answer the question, life now is not as good as it was before this all happened. Story 3, I don't know. How's your life now? Is way too broad for a question. So much has happened, good and bad. I can answer that we are both alive, healthy, and have a relatively good lifestyle. I try to be thankful of those things every day. I'm having a hard time writing. I never feel allowed to discuss this, so I kind of got excited seeing the question. This because it is a very personal matter, and I'm a bit worried someone I know would know me from this. Yes, it's a silly thing because there are 7 billion people in the world, and my story is definitely not unique, but still. I had him at 19. I wanted to abort, but gave in by the pressure from his father, and especially his family. I don't remember much of the first 3 years of his life. It's all kind of a blur with nothing in it. I have almost no pictures, no memories of major events, etc., except that it was a really, really hard time. His father left us when he was 4 months and 3 weeks old. For the first year of his life, I was deeply depressed, suicidal, and struggling. Nothing worked out like I thought it would. I didn't magically connect with him. He was a difficult baby, cried a lot, and in a ridiculously small apartment. I never got to sleep. I never got to do anything. I was always alone, except he was always there, always needed me. All my friends, or by then ex-friends, were having the time of their lives. My mother died when he was 2, and then it really was just the 2 of us. It slowly got a bit better every year. He started developing a personality and growing up. He was so cute and I loved him. It started to get a bit better when he was around 4, but I never got over having him. I still then struggled greatly with the feeling of deep sense of loss and living a life that wasn't my own, like my life had been robbed away from me and didn't fit in the view I imagined my future back then at all. Every day was like a bad dream. Life was just advancing, but I wasn't on board, only someone who watched from the side. I was trying extremely hard to be a good mom, but felt like a failure all the time. I'm the daughter of a low-income single mom and always felt like I only wasn't a failure to my own mother. But I let the girl who dreamed big when I was a child down. Now he is 15 and life has normalized. I love him very much, but life is what it is. When we're planning his future, I do have stings of pain knowing that all what he is going to experience is something I never got to have but dreamed about when I was his age. University, traveling, having fun. He is a good kid, but we have had our own struggles. I worry about him getting on a bad track a lot. I wish it never happens. His father is just trouble, like always. He has been unreliable, not keeping his word, distant, but when they do meet, overly showering him with gifts and goodies for his whole life. But he now has a wife and an 8-month-old, and my son has been deeply hurt realizing how differently he treats her daughter and him, and it has resulted in him acting up. We had a good talk in Christmas. My son felt like I was taking his dad's side, because I'd always tried not to badmouth his father to him, but realized I tried so hard it ended up making him feel like he wasn't allowed to be in pain when his dad was an ass. About him, and I think things will get better now. I have an okay job. Nothing I'm passionate about, but something that has been built around his schedule. I don't date and haven't dated since his dad left him. Yes, 15 years. Yes, I know I am a freak. I don't really want to discuss this subject. Life has kind of been just surviving from one problem to another, struggling with money. I'm not happy, but I'm not suicidal either. Just existing, I guess. I'm just rambling, so I will stop this here. Thank you for letting me write this. It felt good. Edit. Hi. I just wanted to say a big thank you to everyone for the kind messages. I'm very overwhelmed of the reception this has got. I expected the opposite. I wish I had the time to message and reply to everyone, and it feels rude not to, but I have to go to work now. Still, thank you, Reddit, for this experience. Even this is just support on internet. It feels very uplifting. I'm leaving my computer with a smile on my face. Story 4. It's okay, I have two. Now one 8 and the other is 1. The 8-year-old is hilariously weird, and the 1-year-old is showing that she also can be. It's fewing hard. I have no idea what I'm actually doing. I know I'm not the best mother, but I'm okay with it because I know I'm doing my best. Story 5. I have spent many years working very hard to do it right. By that, I mean better than my parents. Educational support, healthy emotional contact, life skills, etc. There have been many challenges to all those things. I'm very tired, and as I get closer to the sort of finish line of college graduation, I find I have far less patience and am filled with regret for the life I had imagined. On the one hand, a lot of my dissatisfaction with how life has turned out has to do with my partner. They really wanted children, but then didn't step up to fill the role of parent. On the other hand, I could have sought out a better partner if I wasn't burdened with the job of raising kids. I have a deep commitment to finishing. I would never be one of those walk-away parents. I really wanted to have satisfying work and travel, and that's not how it turned out. I've made my kids' life very nice, and I'm hoping there is time left to get pleasure in the next phase of my life. Story 6. Strange. I've had health issues since childhood, and was told that I would never become a mother when I was 11 or 12. I spent my formative years operating under the assumption that I'd never bear children, so I never even considered that I would grow up one day and have a baby. It's not that I didn't want any, the choice wasn't presented to me, so I never even spared children a passing thought. They were something that happened to other people. Then I got pregnant with a longtime partner when I was 21, and later found out that he'd been poking holes in our condoms for over a year, and decided that it was an opportunity I may never have again, so I kept the pregnancy. What has happened in the years since? I left my ultra-abusive partner when I realized that he was a danger to my child. I found an amazing psychiatrist team that I've been seeing for nearly 2 years, and my mental health has never been better. I went from struggling between apartment to renting a house in a great neighborhood. I'm in a healthy relationship. Having a child gave me the hope and motivation to turn my life into something good and wonderful. My daughter gave me the strength to leave a relationship that would have eventually killed me, and got me away from a man who has gone on to try to victimize children in the past few years. Every abuse that I allowed to be piled on me, I threw all of it away for my child. It shows my effort. I'm a worthwhile person, and I'd never know it if I didn't keep my pregnancy. My daughter is attending a fantastic school, and her teachers love her. She's respectful and kind and fun. She's clever and bright. Next year, she has the opportunity to attend a STEM school, and I don't think I've ever been more excited. She loves bao and miso soup, and I'm teaching her how to use chopsticks. She knows the time warp and loves spooky things. I'm not saying that kids fix everything. My life was dismantled to the foundations, and I had to struggle to rebuild. But what I built was healthier, better, more wholesome than that I had. I remember when I sat down with myself to decide what to do, sitting in the hospital, 4 weeks pregnant, only knowing because I had fainted on the side of the road. I made the choice to become a parent. I decided that my life was going to change. I didn't enter into parenthood with the assumption that I'd still go out to the club, run off to hang out with friends whenever, go party with unsavory folk. I knew that I was investing years upon years into another human. I've spent the past nearly 5 years cultivating friendships with people in early education, hardworking students, childhood friends who give me advice on low-risk investment accounts. Dinner parties are my main source of socialization. I cook like mother-fewing Julia Child, and I've evolved into the group mom. It's a quiet, mundane life that I love more than anything. I have a lump in my throat right now, thinking about my life. In 2 months, I have to plan a party for my daughter and about 19 other 4 to 5-year-olds for her 5th birthday, and I wouldn't trade it for all the riches in the world. Story 7. I resented my wife for not following the plan and aborting the pregnancy. I carried that weight for a long time. I've grown to love my daughter very much. We have also since had 2 more, only the last of which was planned. I love them all. I love my wife. The pain my resentment caused, though, reverberates in my marriage today. I will most likely be divorced this year. We've built such a great life for the kids, but along the way, I lost my wife. There is nothing I wouldn't give to take back my asshole comments and shutty attitude all those years ago. Story 8. I have an in-law who married a lady who didn't want kids. He pressured her into having kids anyhow. She got pregnant with twins. The twins were born with disabilities. He killed himself when they were 2 years old. Story 9. My daughter was born mentally disabled. I always tell myself it could be worse, that there are kids who just shake back and forth in wheelchairs. Thing is, she is happy now, but has no concept of death, and I can only imagine what it will be like when her mother and I are gone. She will be institutionalized and abused, probably. Story 10. I found out 11 days ago that I was around 8 months pregnant. That's called a pregnancy denial. I still had my period. Nothing changed about my body. Nothing could tell me I was pregnant. Until I went to the ER because my stomach hurt like hell, and after an ultrasound, they discovered the pregnancy. They told me the baby would be born in the end of January. Monday, I went back to the ER because my back was killing me, and I almost wanted to jump in front of a train just to make the pain go away. They told me I was about to give birth, dilated at 7 centimeters. My son was born January 1st at 11:59 p.m. 2 weeks ago, my boyfriend and I were 25 and 26, enjoying life together and not planning on having kids. Today, we are parents. Our life is a mess. We are depressed, completely lost. Our emotions are fewed up and we can't think straight, and every minute of the day brings a panic attack and we want our life back so badly. But then we remember we have each other, and then our son does something funny, and we feel a little better, and then he randomly smiles, and everything is okay. We got this. We are a mess, and we didn't ask for our lives to change. And if we knew about the pregnancy, we wouldn't have a child. But now that he's here, even though we are going through hell mentally and physically, even though we still want our life back, we can't imagine going back to it without our son. It's fewing hard, but we got this. Edit to answer the questions. No, I'm not obese. I don't know an LBS, but I'm 75 kilograms, so I might need to lose tilde 5 or so, but definitely not obese. The way the doctors and psychiatrist at the hospital explained it to us is that grossly, parts of my brain knew I wasn't ready, so it gave the order to not let me know that I was pregnant. Instead of growing back to front, sorry, I don't know how to explain it since English is not my first language, the womb grew along my spine and behind my ribs. So it didn't show at all, but once I knew, in less than a day, I had an 8-month pregnant belly. That's also why I still had my period. Obviously, they weren't real periods, but it was enough for my brain to hide the pregnancy. I'm sure you can find a lot of information about it on the internet. I'm on mobile, so I can't provide them right now. Adoption was our first thought. When they told me I was pregnant, I threw up everywhere, and I never cried so much in my life. I was in shock. I was admitted in the hospital right away because they had to make sure everything was okay with the baby and with me. So my BF and I spent 3 days at the hospital with nothing to think about. But what do? The way we saw things was, would it be worse to somehow adjust our lives to welcome the baby and make sure he has the best life we can provide? We have a house, 2 full-time jobs, savings, etc. We just weren't mentally ready to be parents. Or to give birth to a human being that's the result of our love, even if unexpected, and give it away and spend the rest of our lives wondering how he's doing, if he has a family that loves him, if he's happy. No matter what I said about being depressed and my life being hell, we love him deeply. We can't go back and we don't want to. It's just mentally exhausting to realize that our lives will never be the same and that we have a new and huge responsibility. It's a lot to adjust to in 5 days, and we see a psychologist daily to help us cope. I'm still in the hospital. I'm going home on Tuesday, and I truly believe things will be easier once we are in our environment. It's been the worst and best times of our lives in just a few days, and it's a lot to wrap our heads around in itself. It's draining, but we will get better. Like I said, we have each other, and we love our son, even though we don't love the circumstances in which we had him. Story 11. I can't even imagine that small of a window to adjust to even the idea of being a parent. Wow. When our son was an infant, he felt like a tiny demanding stranger who cried all the time. But every month got a little easier in some ways, and more fun. Don't get me wrong, it's still hard. But newborn hard is level 9,000. Are there any mom groups in your community? The moms group I joined was through a church, but was surprisingly amazing. I'm only 1.5 hours in, but so far it's been exhausting and amazing. Good luck with baby surprise. Story 12. Shti Kiddo's mum fled across the country, breaking a restraining order after she got her support order placed against me. I wasn't ready to support myself, let alone help support a kid. She's been sexually abused by her uncle and probably her mother, and it's been difficult at best to have the uncle thrown into prison. The process has been going on for about 2 years now. She's told me she wants to live with me. I don't blame her. But right now I'm homeless, and so much school debt that I'll probably die with it, and really just struggling to keep myself going. Story 13, 6 years later. Financially recovering. Her bills from having her wiped out our savings. Then we couldn't recover since we were throwing $800 a month to daycare, diapers, formula, Miski kid stuff on top of day-to-day life. She started school, so daycare is much cheaper now. That alone is getting us out of the hole. Finances are the reason my husband got a vasectomy. We never ever want to be that tight budget wise again. Ever. Outside to that, she's awesome. And right now she's playing Sonic on her tablet. Story 14. I always said, I'd rather have herpes than have a kid. Well, I ended up with a kid from a girl that was just a FK buddy. I begged her to get an abortion. I offered to pay for the entire thing and take care of her afterwards. She refused my offer. And as she got further into her pregnancy, she asked me if she thought we should try to be together for the baby. My father got married twice because he knocked up someone, and neither marriage worked out, so I said no, because that's how people end up miserable. Fast forward 8 years later, I couldn't imagine my life without this beautiful little girl that's going to jump into my bed and beg me for an egg sandwich any second now. Story 15. It wasn't until after we were married that my wife decided she wanted a baby. Instincts, I suppose. I did not want a child ever, but given her persistence, I felt like I needed to choose between spending the rest, if my life being the one who took that away from her, or take on the burden myself and go for it. Well, they say it changes everything, and it's the greatest magical experience. What they don't tell you is that you trade everything for it. Sure, life carries on, but every moment of every day is defined by your child's needs. Want to stay up late? You will pay for it in the morning. Long day at work? Hello, 2 hours of cooking and cleaning. What would you like to do this weekend? Doesn't matter, you don't have time. Finally got ahead financially? Well, enjoy dumping $12K a year into 4 days a week of daycare. Oh boy, got a sitter for date night. Still got to get up at 6 a.m., so don't have too much fun. We are mid-30s, legitimate middle class. We took on zero debt for the medical costs, all saved and planned in the years prior. We have an affordable home, new cars, etc., etc. On the surface, it's a perfect scenario, and my daughter is so smart and beautiful, but I hate waking up every flipping day. Now she's awake after less than an hour of her only nap of the day. Game over. Story 16. Great, I got knocked up at 19, had him at 20. I was with his dad for 4 years at that point, so it wasn't like I got knocked up to some random dude. I went to an abortion clinic. My SO went with me, although he was totally against it, and it was a known fact that we would be breaking up when I chose to abort this child. When they started telling me details of how it worked, I broke down and freaked out and left. I absolutely couldn't do that. In retrospect, I was so against kids because my mom and dad didn't start having kids until they were 28 29ths. So in some way, I felt that I had failed my parents, although I had graduated high school with 3.8 GPA, was in college, had my own place and a full-time job, and had been with the father for years. Anyhow, I decided to just suck it up and have a baby. The whole pregnancy, I wouldn't refer to him as a baby. It was the monster growing inside me. I was not happy about the idea of having a baby. I didn't tell anyone until they asked. 5-6 months, and I openly would tell people that I wasn't excited and I didn't understand how anyone could be excited for a kid, etc., etc. After having my son, when he was about 2, my mom told me that her and my sister were worried that I was going to give birth, then take off and leave the baby with my SO. Well, I had that baby in December of 2009. And honestly, life is great. I did fall in love as soon as I saw him. There was no awkward stage at all. I've been a caring and attentive mother. I'm human and I'm not perfect. I'm not trying to give the illusion that I am, since he was born. It's like this weird instinct kicked in, and as soon as I started hanging out with him, I was totally consumed by this amazing, loving feeling. It's like I was so worried about having to take care of another human being and how needy babies are, but really when he needed stuff, it was such a good feeling to be the one to give it to him. It's weird. So weird. Like all of a sudden, my biggest fear is anything happening to this tiny little baby that just a few days, weeks, etc. Ego was in my womb, and I was calling him a monster. Weird. I love him. I'm happy everything worked out like it did. It made me totally open to unconditional love, and I truly believe it has changed me for the better as a human. He's the best. I did eventually stop dating his dad, 4 years later, but we get along great, and I like my son's stepmom, and his dad likes my SO. Everything is great. It turned out okay. I hope I didn't ramble too much. Also, just because it worked out for me doesn't mean it's the same for everyone. Story 17. My son just turned 17. After his birthday dinner tonight, he was yelling and screaming at me and calling me names, then throwing stuff in my face that he remembers. Stuff his POS abusive rapist of a dad has always told him. Lies, from when he was a kid. I struggle to survive and wish to this day I'd never had him. He's always been a little asshole. So, that pretty much sums it up. Story 18. I miss sleeping in, but I'm not as suicidal anymore because it's as if he's filled this void and I can feel something again. Love my son. Story 19. When I was younger, I never ever wanted kids. I hated being around children, and they were all for some reason drawn to me, and I was absolutely annoyed by them. All of them. My mom growing up always told me not to have kids. She wasn't about to raise another one, and that if I got pregnant, we'd take care of it. So I got older, 25 on our own, was engaged to my BF of 7 years, married now, and we got pregnant. I wasn't upset about it. We'd talked about it, and both wanted a child. So it was okay. I was scared to tell my family, though. When I did, my mom was excited to be a grandma, but not excited for me to be a mom. I loved pregnancy. Everything about it was amazing to me, but my mom kept warning me how much work and how hard it was to raise a baby, so I just wanted to stay pregnant forever. I was afraid I was going to be a terrible mom. My mom got everything needed for a baby for her house. Note, she smoked forever in the house, so much the walls were yellow and you could peel tar spots off the windows. But it's not something I was concerned about because that's how I was raised. Because she figured she'd be raising, or at least always babysitting my child, I guess. She thought I'd want not much to do with my baby once I had her. So I had my baby girl, the nurse, who could smell the smoke on everyone, also I didn't, and don't smoke or drink just so you all know LOL, gave us a huge speech about how terrible first, second, and even third-hand smoke is for baby. I loved my baby the moment I saw her. She wasn't some object I could just hand over to anybody. When I brought her home, that's where she stayed. I didn't want anyone around us. My husband smoked and drank a lot, and I didn't even want him around her. Everyone who smoked became very aware that they were to wash their hands, change the shirts and chew gum if they wanted to hold her. My husband, after a lot of fighting, quit smoking and sobered up. I was a mom now, to a beautiful child. A child I wanted to be and do the absolute best for and still do. She is my world and changed my world. She has never been in my mother's house because of the smoke, and my mother has never babysat her. I stay at home and we learn and teach each other every day. She changed my life, and I am very proud of who I am for her. Story 20. It's great. I was never against the idea of having children. I just never wanted to have any. But my wife was not budging, and she was very interested in having a baby. My child is the best thing that ever happened to me. I definitely don't regret it. Although I'm glad I managed to put it off long enough for us to get established a little bit financially. Story 21. Fewing awesome. I never wanted kids. I tried to get a vasectomy at 20, but couldn't find a doctor that would do it. And my first one was a drunken accident. It took a couple of years to fully adjust. I was a highly competitive cyclist and runner, as well as having a well-paying job that I had to leave to spend more time with the fam. But after going through that initial adjustment period, everything is great. My daughter, oldest, is like a mini-me, loves going to the gym with me, riding bikes, and has a fierce personality, while my son is hilarious and sweet. My wife and I still get overwhelmed from time to time, but it's all part of the journey that makes this so exciting, and we've learned to recognize that and enjoy it as part of the process. If I had it to do all over again, I would do everything the same. Story 22. I became a mom of a born child for the first time just before my 40th birthday, and I totally get and support people who don't want to have children. There's nothing wrong with you if you don't want to be a parent. Don't do it. Before I became a mom, I always knew that I didn't want any kids. I was raised in an abusive, neglectful home by parents who clearly didn't like kids or being parents, and it never looked like any damn fun to me. I terminated an unplanned pregnancy when I was 20 and another one when I was 22. I married a man when I was 29 who already had children, and I was content with being a part-time stepmother. After 2 years of marriage, he asked me to go off birth control and see what happened, and I agreed. Well, nothing happened for 8 years, even though we had a very active sex life, and I was sure it was because I had had those dastardly abortions, and I accepted it as a just punishment. Then, his kids were grown, and we were done paying child support, and bought a Harley Davidson, and were going to have a great time. I asked my hubby to have a vasectomy, and he agreed, but procrastinated, and I didn't nag him. On my 39th birthday, I know due to math, he knocked me up. I was totally freaked out and seriously considered another abortion, but only for a few minutes, literally. After we talked it over, hubby and I chose to continue and become new parents at age 40 and 44. Of course, it hasn't been all magical, but the change in perspective was profound, and lucky for me, a beautiful one. I was fortunate to be able to stay home with my son for a few years, and it was a wonderful time. I was completely devoted to his care and raising, which, in hindsight, was a mistake. I should have devoted a bit more to my own self, but I grew past that. My life now is one with more purpose than ever before. Preparing a young person to navigate this world, and most importantly, teaching them to live without me, is a daunting mission, but it fills me up with pride and joy to watch my kid growing into an amazing young person, and also, I am profoundly grateful that I had a choice. Story 23. My girl is almost 13 now, and for most of the childhood, I would have said that it was amazing, revolutionary, and helped me to grow as a person, which it did all of those things. And while I really enjoyed her presence, I always had longed for her to grow her consciousness into someone I could really talk to, laugh, and joke with. But as she has gotten older, it has reminded me why I was always not wanted to have a kid, which is to see them struggle in many of the ways that I had. I guess that any person with some kind of handicap considers this, and it's not like I was planning on having a kid, especially with that woman that I ended up hating for so long, but couldn't bring myself to leave. But when we found out she was pregnant, we made the choice to commit ourselves to it, and what followed were some of the best years of my life. I hand-delivered her myself. I would sing to her daily. The love it brought to my life was tremendous. I had feelings like she was going to be the one to overcome the challenges and be further along than I ever could have in life, and really showed promise. But I still hated the mother, and we fought too much and gave up at some point. Close to 2 years old and the woman turned sour, and I only saw her every other weekend and sometimes during the week. Her life with her mother during this time really scarred her, not to find out until later. But I took over full-time when she was 4 and raised her with the help of my mother and put her through the same school that I struggled to endure, as much as it pained me. She went through some really mean teachers and mean kids and started having some real bad thoughts as early as 8. She was struggling with depression even that early and heavy fear of abandonment. I finally got her on some antidepressants this past spring when I discovered there was self-harm involved and she did even worse. We tried several, but nothing worked, and she was pulled off of them. But psychologists are pretty booked around here, and so it would be months before she saw one. Then we had an emergency, and then she spent time in a facility and couldn't reintegrate to school, so now I am her learning coach, and she attends online school. Combined with therapy and some meds that are working, things are looking back up, but she has to self-motivate, and she has been struggling. All the while, I have started up some medication to deal with my issues, but wow, is it a struggle. Looking back, and knowing now that she would struggle in the same way I did, I wouldn't have chosen this. The world is too cold, and we aren't advanced enough as a society in order to handle struggles like this, IMO. To see all of the neglect and need in the world out there, and the kids going without, and the kids that were going without grown up and needing so much just breaks my heart, and I wouldn't wish that on anyone. Of course, there are always two sides to the coin. I guess I would say things are beyond amazing more than I could imagine, and more horrifying at the same time. I don't want to even date for so many reasons, but my tastes are horrible, and I don't want to trust anyone to be around her. Or on the flip side, the special ladies that I have had to say goodbye for one reason or the other, seeing her crying over never being able to talk to them again just rips my heart out. There is just so much more to it. It's hard to paint the picture. I really love and cherish the girl, and so glad she is still with me today, and that she is doing well. We are both finding a way, and finding the beauty of being alive. But wow, sometimes I think that if I could have just give free time to helping kids that already were existing, perhaps it would have been better off. I couldn't really fathom what I was getting myself into. I try to do better than my parents did, but find myself lacking so much, and seeing the real insides of her mom and family kind of coming out in her, while I would rather never see her mom again, makes it even harder. I love her and love being a father, but the decisions are tremendous and the feeling of hopelessness is substantial as the complexity of the questions are multiplied. Just have to keep smiling and face the challenges the best we can. Story 24. My daughter is a depot shot baby. Definitely wasn't expecting that and just took a pregnancy test because I found one while moving and thought, hey, why not? I never wanted children. I have a genetic disorder that causes immense amounts of pain, and any children I have a 50% chance of inheriting it. Besides the fact that I will never have a normal life and will keep having surgeries, procedures, and lots of pain, I didn't want to give a child my syndrome. It was shoddy while I was growing up and I didn't get to be a child in the traditional sense. I always said I didn't get to enjoy my childhood, so I wanted to enjoy the rest of my life without having to care for a tiny human. I planned on having an abortion, but after a lot of discussions, I decided not to. I regretted that choice, off and on up until she was born. But having her was the best thing that ever happened to me. I wouldn't have had a child if it wasn't accidental, but I'm so glad it happened. It was hard. Pregnancy destroyed my body, and I'm still dealing with the repercussions of it, but my daughter is so empathetic and understanding of my limitations, and she's only 3. She makes every day bright. When I have surgeries, she takes care of me, along with my husband, of course. She reminds me to take my medicine, although I never forget to haha. She is just like me, so funny and weird. We had genetic testing conducted for her, and she doesn't have my gene mutations. I honestly can't imagine not having her now. Definitely not having any more children. but she is the light of my life. So, overall, it's pretty great. Story 25. Absolutely a disaster. My career is ruined. Life in shambles, single and thousands of dollars in debt, with no real possibility of being in the positive for at least 10 years. I'm also renting a basement suite from my friend while I just lost my job to the other parent disappear. Again. I also pay child support while I have my kid full-time because I'm waiting for a court date. It's been a living hell for 3 years. I mentioned before that I should be seeing a psychiatrist but can't even afford to walk into the building right now. I also openly talked about an abortion when the pregnancy happened, and I realized the type of person that miraculously got pregnant. Pretty much everything that could go wrong for me did. 4 years ago, I had a successful up-and-coming career, couple thousand in the bank, a clear path to where I wanted to be. Now, I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to afford life day to day. But the kid, well, this little autistic dude is the end-all and be-all. While 0% of this disaster is his fault, I love him more than I could ever have imagined. Actually, part of all of it is that I decided to not be an every other weekend parent and a 50/50th parent. Would go to battle for him and his betterment and actually am with all the court appearances and stands I have made to his mother. Overall disaster now, but hoping all this will he worth it for him and I in the future. Story 26. I've never wanted children, but my wife did. We compromised and now have a baby boy. I didn't want him, but he has grown on me. I just now want to make sure he's better adjusted and balanced than I am. Even I can see I'm not very emotionally healthy. Story 27. Actually, it's pretty good. I never wanted kids until I met my husband. I don't why, but something changed when I was about 24 or 25. I have 2 babies now, almost 3 and almost 1. I am so thankful for them. They are little monsters sometimes, but they are great little people. I love my nieces and nephews too. But other kids, I can do without them. Story 28. 5 weeks in, and it's nowhere near as bad as I thought it would be. Pregnancy was the worst part. I had several complications and felt like my whole body had been taken over by some malevolent parasite. My outlook on having a child ranged from may to F you no, depending on the hour, for the entire 10+ months of my pregnancy. And then I was in labor, and the midwife told me she could see the head crowning, and suddenly I wanted nothing more than to meet my baby girl face to face. I hate to admit it, but all the people who told me I would fall in insta-love with my baby were right. Apparently, I have more maternal urges than I thought I did. Life is different now, but not in a bad way. The things I dreaded, diapers, sleep deprivation, PPD, etc., aren't anywhere near as bad as I thought they'd be, and the stuff I thought would be easy, breastfeeding, has been way more complex than expected. Karma made up for my Shashti pregnancy by giving me the world's chillest baby, so that helps. She's also cute as hell, which I honestly didn't expect. I've made fun of so many ugly babies in my life. I expected to have a gargoyle as punishment. I'm one and done when it comes to kids, but I am very happy I had her. I love her to bits and can already tell she's going to be a great person to know as she grows up. Story 29. I never wanted children in my early 20s. I didn't hate them, but just was an active thought in the back of my mind with any relationship. My ex-wife fell pregnant, married at the time, though the relationship was far from healthy. Now I've got my little one. Her 5th birthday is coming up. She's my everything. She's kind, has a pretty good sense of humor for a young child, and at the moment has some weird beef with ants. So I'm glad we had our daughter. There's been a lot of drama which I hope ends one day. I guess my advice would be, don't worry too much about having a child, in the sense that it's so damn rewarding. Instead, worry about the person you're with, the love you feel for each other, and the commitment of having a child with someone you can't really stand.